Lyra had always been a quiet girl. Even among humans, who were known for their strong voices, sudden laughter, and bold opinions, she spoke softly. Her words were gentle, her movements small, and her presence easy to overlook. But on the alien research station called Arkan 7, her quiet nature made her almost invisible. Arkan 7 floated on the far edge of civilized space, far from human borders. The station was owned and operated by several alien species, most of whom viewed humans with a mix of curiosity and unease. Humans were rare here. They came from a world that every species classified as a Deathworld, a planet overflowing with dangerous animals, poisonous plants, violent storms, and unpredictable landscapes. Many aliens wondered how humans survived such a place. Others wondered how they survived long enough to create ships, travel through stars, and walk calmly through alien halls like nothing was extraordinary. Lyra was the only human on Arkan 7. She worked in the maintenance department, checking scanners, cleaning equipment, and calibrating small machines that kept the station running smoothly. Her shifts were long, but she never complained. She rarely spoke unless someone asked her a direct question. Even then, her answers were short. Most aliens assumed she was shy, maybe a little nervous. They didn't know humans very well. They didn't understand that quiet did not mean weak. One alien in particular misunderstood her more than anyone else. His name was Varkesh, a tall, broad-shouldered worker from a scale-skinned species known as the Zathans. Zathans had a reputation for being proud, competitive, and sometimes too confident for their own good. They believed strength was everything. They respected loud voices, aggressive gestures, and bold actions. So when Varkesh first saw Lyra moving silently through the halls, holding a datapad close to her chest and lowering her head whenever someone brushed past, he thought she was the weakest creature on the station. Weakness bothered him, or rather, it amused him. To him, Lyra became an easy target. He started with small things blocking her path during work shifts, pretending he didn't see her as she tried to pass. Lyra would simply step aside, wait patiently, and continue walking. She didn't sigh, didn't glare, didn't react at all. This only encouraged him. Sometimes he knocked tools out of her hands by accident. Other times he pushed past her with his thick shoulder and pretended she was in his way. Lyra never said anything. She would pick up her tools or steady herself and return to her tasks as if nothing had happened. She didn't report him. She didn't tell anyone. Most of the crew assumed she barely noticed his behavior, but she noticed everything. Lyra saw the way his eyes followed her, waiting for a reaction. She observed the way he puffed out his chest when other aliens watched, trying to show dominance, and she noticed how he always made sure to bother her when the supervisors weren't looking. What Varkesh didn't know was that humans were trained from birth to handle danger. Their entire world demanded awareness, caution, and quick thinking. Even the calmest human had instincts sharper than most species on Arkan 7, and Lyra, growing up on the edges of forests filled with predators back home, had developed an unshakable patience. She knew how to watch, she knew how to wait, she knew how to choose the right moment. But she hoped it would never come to that. For weeks, life continued in its quiet routine. The station hummed with the sounds of engines, ventilation fans, and distant machinery. Lyra moved from department to department with her small toolkit strapped to her belt. The other aliens grew used to her presence, greeting her politely but never asking many personal questions. She didn't mind. Silence was comfortable. The only uncomfortable part was Varkesh. His behavior slowly escalated. His voice became louder when he spoke to her, trying to provoke something: fear, anger, anything. But Lyra simply nodded or answered softly, refusing to give him what he wanted. One day, during a long maintenance cycle in the cargo bay, Lyra was kneeling beside a scanning terminal, checking for loose wiring. The room was mostly empty except for stacked crates and a large overhead crane. The station was in its afternoon cycle, so several workers were elsewhere, leaving the bay quiet. That was when Varkesh entered. He walked loudly, each step echoing across the metal floor. Lyra didn't turn around. She continued tightening a wire, her hands steady. "Well, look who it is," Varkesh said with a grin. His deep voice bounced through the chamber. Lyra gave a small nod without looking up. "Hello, Varkesh." Her calm tone annoyed him instantly. He came closer and kicked the side of the terminal gently, just enough to make the internal parts clatter. "You always work," he said. "Do humans not know how to relax?" "I like working," Lyra answered. She didn't like confrontation. She never had. But she wasn't afraid of it either. Fear was something that humans saved for real danger, not annoyances. Still, Varkesh didn't know that. He leaned against the wall and folded his arms. His eyes examined her like she was a strange bug. "Your species is strange," he said. "Always so fragile. Always so soft. Yet you walk around like you belong among real civilizations." Lyra tightened another wire. "Humans adapt." "That's all," Varkesh snorted. "Adapt? To what? You look like the air on this station could knock you down." He walked behind her and suddenly nudged her shoulder with his knee. Not enough to injure her, but enough to disrupt her work. Her tool slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor with a metallic echo. Lyra inhaled slowly. Not in anger, just to steady her focus. She picked up the tool again and continued her task. Her silence made Varkesh restless. Why didn't she react? Why didn't she show fear? Why didn't she at least look upset? He wanted something, anything, that would prove she was beneath him. Instead, he felt ignored, and that bruised his pride more than he admitted. Over the next hour, he hovered around her, finding excuses to stay nearby. Lyra finished her wiring and moved to the next station. But Varkesh followed, leaning on the tables, playing with her tools, and making loud comments about her small size. Still, she said nothing. But inside, something was shifting. It wasn't anger. It wasn't frustration. It was an old instinct humans had kept for thousands of years, an instinct to measure threats, store information, and wait for the moment when enough was enough. Every time Varkesh blocked her path, she made a mental note. Every time he touched her tools, she made another note. Every time he insulted her species, she added one more. She didn't want a confrontation. She didn't want anyone to get hurt. She believed in peace, in patience, in giving others time to grow better. But everyone had limits. That limit appeared 2 weeks later, during a routine inspection shift near the engine coolant tanks. Lyra carried a scanner that checked temperature levels across the pipes. It was an expensive, delicate device assigned to her for the day. Varkesh appeared again, loud and confident as always. He walked up to her, snatched the scanner from her hands, and held it high above her head like a toy. "Let's see how well you work without this," he laughed. Lyra stepped forward, reaching gently toward the device. "Please give it back." "It's not a toy, Varkesh." "Oh? Are you going to make me?" he taunted. Lyra didn't answer. Her breath was steady, her posture calm, her eyes focused only on the scanner. Then Varkesh threw it. Not at her. Not to her, just tossed it into a dark storage pit behind the coolant tanks. The scanner hit the metal floor with a sharp crack. Lyra froze. Not from fear, not from shock, but from a quiet, deep disappointment that settled in her chest like heavy stone. She looked at Varkesh for the first time that day. No anger, no fire, just a calm, measuring gaze that made Varkesh suddenly uncomfortable. Her voice, soft as always, broke the silence. "Why did you do that?" Varkesh shrugged. "Because I can." Lyra inhaled slowly. It was a breath she had taken 1,000 times in dangerous forests back home, a breath that told her body to prepare. She didn't move toward him. She didn't argue. She didn't threaten him. She simply turned and walked toward the pit where her damaged scanner lay. She climbed down, picked it up gently, and examined the cracked display. She held it for a long moment, then set it aside. Then she looked up at Varkesh again. Something invisible shifted in the air between them. Varkesh felt it like a sudden drop in temperature. Lyra didn't glare, didn't frown, didn't make a sound. But her stillness changed. Her presence changed. She was no longer ignoring him. She was evaluating him. And for the first time since arriving on the station, Lyra understood one unmistakable truth. Varkesh wasn't going to stop. And she wasn't going to stay quiet forever. Before leaving the bay, she spoke in the same soft tone she always used. Please don't follow me today." Then she walked out, leaving Varkesh confused and strangely uneasy. He didn't know it yet, but that was the moment the balance began to shift. The storm inside the quiet girl had opened one eye, and a Deathworld storm never opened just one. For the next few days, the station felt different to Lyra. Nothing on the outside changed, machines still hummed, workers still hurried from one department to another, and supervisors still shouted orders over the comm systems. But inside her, something had become sharper. Her eyes paid closer attention. Her breathing grew more controlled, and her instincts, usually soft and quiet, were now watching the world with a new alertness. She still did her tasks with calm focus, but she moved with the awareness of someone who expected trouble around every corner. Varkesh noticed that change, even if he did not fully understand it. He saw how she no longer walked with her head lowered. She walked steadily, eyes forward, like someone ready to face whatever came. It annoyed him. He had wanted her small and silent, not poised and collected, but his pride kept him from backing off. The idea that a soft little human could ignore him bothered him more than he liked to admit. And the day he threw her scanner into the pit had replayed in his mind several times. He couldn't shake the memory of her expression, not anger, not fear, but disappointment. It had unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. 3 days after the incident, the crew gathered in the central hall for the weekly assignment shift. Lyra stood near the back, quietly waiting for her task list. The air smelled faintly of coolant and recycled oxygen. Workers from half a dozen species chatted in their own languages, their voices blending into a low noise. Varkesh entered the hall with his usual confidence. But the moment he spotted Lyra, something inside him tightened. She wasn't looking at him. She wasn't avoiding him either. She simply existed in her space, calm, focused, unafraid. He approached her out of habit, expecting her to react the way she always had. But when he stepped into her path, Lyra didn't stop. She simply walked around him with a smooth, steady motion that felt natural to her. It felt like disrespect to him. He frowned. "You ignoring me now?" 7. Lyra looked up with her usual calm eyes. "I'm going to work." "That's not what I asked." "I heard you," she replied quietly. "I still need to go." Her simplicity made several nearby workers look in their direction. A few Zathan workers shifted away, sensing tension. But Lyra never raised her voice. She simply continued walking to the assignment board. For Varkesh, it felt like something heavy struck his pride. He followed her through the hall, stopping only a few steps behind her as she checked her assignment on a glowing panel. His voice came low, almost a hiss. "You think you can walk away whenever you want?" Lyra kept her eyes on the screen. "Everyone can walk away, Varkesh." He had no answer to that. It made sense, and he hated that it made sense. Her assignment sent her to the upper tech wing for air filter calibration. She picked up her tools and quietly made her way toward the lifts. Varkesh watched her go, confused by the lack of fear in her footsteps. Lyra worked through the morning with her usual discipline. She dismantled filter brackets, cleaned them, and replaced damaged pieces with steady hands. She barely thought about Varkesh while she worked. Her mind stayed focused on measurements, air pressure readings, and the soft rhythm of turning screws. But deep inside, she knew something was coming. Someone like Varkesh wouldn't simply stop. She had seen his type before, not on space stations, but back home, in schools, or at local training centers where young humans learned survival skills. Some people mistook patience for weakness. Some mistook kindness for fear. She let out a slow breath and brushed dust from her gloves. She hoped he would choose to stop. But her instincts whispered that he wouldn't. Her instincts were right. Late in the afternoon, while she walked down a quiet maintenance corridor with her scanner in hand, Varkesh appeared from a side passage. His steps were quick and determined. Lyra paused, turning to face him. She did not step back. She did not look nervous. Her calm presence made his irritation spike. "You didn't talk to me this morning," he said. "I didn't need to." "You think you're better than me?" "No," Lyra replied gently. "I just think we don't need to talk." Her words were honest, not rude. But to Varkesh, honesty felt like disrespect. He moved closer, his shadow falling over her. "You're acting different." Lyra took a steady breath. I am only tired. You weren't tired before. I didn't want trouble before. So now you do? He snapped. No, she answered softly. I want peace. That's all. He stared at her, confused by her calm. No shaking hands. No fearful eyes. No lowered head. Humans always seemed gentle. But this was something else. This was steady. Stable. Centered. He didn't know whether to feel threatened or challenged. Before he could speak again, a group of technicians walked into the corridor carrying crates. Lyra stepped aside to let them pass, then walked away without another word. And Varkesh felt that quiet departure hit his pride harder than any insult. For the next 2 days, he tried to ignore her. He tried to convince himself he didn't care. But each time he saw her walking through the halls with her calm presence, something in him twisted. He didn't understand why her silence bothered him so deeply. It wasn't that she fought back, it was that she didn't fear him. By the 4th day, his restraint finally ran out. That evening, the station entered its low-light cycle. Hallways dimmed to soft blues, and most workers returned to their sleeping quarters. Lyra stayed in the workshop late, finishing her final check on a coolant regulator. She packed her tools neatly, as she always did, and stepped into the corridor. The lights flickered gently above her as she made her way down the long, empty passage. She didn't hear Varkesh at first. His steps were heavy but slow, approaching from behind. The tension in the air told her he was coming, before she even turned around. He stopped several meters away, breathing loud and uneven. She turned to face him. Her face held no anger, only that same quiet disappointment she had shown the day he threw her scanner. Why are you following me, Varkesh? Don't say it like that, he muttered. Like what? Like I'm doing something wrong. Lyra held her toolkit in one hand and kept her posture relaxed. Then why are you here? His lips tightened. He wasn't used to being questioned gently. He wasn't used to anyone staying calm around him. You think you can just ignore me, he said. I didn't ignore you, she replied calmly. I kept living my life. You walked away from me. I didn't want to fight. You think you could fight me? He snapped. Lyra didn't answer right away. She simply watched him with steady eyes. And her silence made him shift uncomfortably. I don't like hurting people, she said softly. And I don't want to hurt you. The words felt impossible to Varkesh. Hurt him? A soft, quiet human? The idea seemed ridiculous. But Lyra wasn't boasting. She wasn't threatening him. She was telling him the truth. All her life, she had learned to control her instincts. Even as a child, she had been taught that humans had strength they were not always aware of, and they had to be careful around those who didn't share that strength. Varkesh stepped closer. You think you're strong? Lyra shook her head. I think I must protect myself. And I don't want anyone to get hurt. He paused. Something about her voice made his spine tighten. It wasn't loud. It wasn't bold. It was sincere. He didn't like sincerity. Lyra took one small step back, not out of fear but to give them both space. Please, she said. Go to your quarters. I want this to stop. But Varkesh's pride was too heavy to let her words land. He saw her calmness as a challenge, her silence as rejection, her gentleness as disrespect. He moved forward again. Lyra's eyes sharpened slightly, not in anger, but in readiness. She held her toolkit loosely, aware of every motion around her. She waited for his next words, hoping he would choose the peaceful path, but he didn't. You don't tell me what to do, he growled. And that was the moment something inside Lyra settled with final clarity. She understood he wasn't going to leave her alone. She understood he was turning into a real threat. And she understood that her patience, long as it was, had reached its end. Her instincts, quiet and disciplined until now, rose like a silent wave behind her calm eyes. She spoke one last time. Varkesh, you need to stop. He took another step toward her, and the next moment would change everything for both of them, and for the entire station. The girl from the Deathworld had finally run out of space to retreat. And a human who stops retreating becomes something the galaxy never wants to face. The corridor was silent except for the soft humming of the life support vents. Dim blue lights lined the walls, giving everything a calm glow. But inside that quiet space, a different kind of tension filled the air, heavy, tight, and waiting to break. Lyra stood with her toolkit held lightly in one hand, her posture relaxed but centered. She looked small compared to Varkesh, who towered over her with his thick scales, wide shoulders, and heavy steps. Most aliens would have backed away from him. Most would have run. But Lyra stayed still, not frozen, not afraid, just steady. Varkesh didn't understand that kind of stillness. His tail twitched with frustration. "You're not leaving until we finish this." Lyra blinked slowly, listening not to his words but to the rhythm of his breathing. She could hear the strain in it, anger mixed with confusion. She could smell faint engine oil from his uniform and the metallic scent of the corridor. Her senses, trained by years on a dangerous world, sharpened with each moment. "I don't want to fight," she said. "That's too bad," Varkesh answered. Stepping closer, she didn't move. Instead, she shifted her weight slightly, grounding herself. Her mind stayed calm, like still water under starlight. Her heart beat steady and controlled. "Varkesh," she said softly, "you should stop before someone gets hurt." He laughed, but the laugh sounded forced. "Who? You?" "No," she answered truthfully. Something in her voice made him pause for half a second. Just half. But it was enough for him to feel a cold shiver he didn't understand. It annoyed him, embarrassed him, pushed him further into his own temper. He stepped forward again, trying to intimidate her the way he did with others. But she didn't draw back. Her eyes, calm and clear, stayed on him with a quiet focus. He misread it as defiance. He raised his arm, not to hit her, but to grab her shoulder and force her against the wall so she would finally react. But the moment his muscles moved, Lyra noticed. Humans were trained not formally, but by life itself to read motion faster than most species. On their world, every shadow could be danger. Every small shift could be a threat. Her instincts activated like a quiet switch turning on. She didn't think. She simply moved. Her body stepped aside with a smooth, controlled motion, letting his hand miss her completely. Varkesh stumbled half a step forward. Surprised she wasn't where he expected her to be, before he could turn, she gently placed a hand against his arm, light as a feather, and guided his momentum to the side. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't meant to harm him. It was a redirection. A simple technique humans learned to avoid danger. Varkesh's own weight pulled him slightly forward, and he caught himself with a frustrated growl. "What was that?" he snapped. "Please stop," Lyra said again, her voice steady. "You don't want this." Her calmness only made him angrier. He swung his arm again, wild, unplanned. Lyra stepped back just enough to avoid the strike. Her movements were slow in appearance, but perfectly timed. To Varkesh, it looked like she simply wasn't where his arm expected her to be. He swung again, confused and irritated. Again, she sidestepped, her feet barely making a sound on the metal floor. She didn't attack. She didn't try to hurt him. She simply kept herself safe, and that frustrated him more than anything. "Stand still," he shouted. "I won't," she said gently. He rushed toward her with a heavy step, trying to corner her. She leaned aside by an inch, letting him pass, and his shoulder brushed the wall instead. He hissed softly in pain. Something in his expression shifted, no longer pure anger. Now there was confusion, maybe even a bit of fear. He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "How?" he said, breathless. "How are you doing that?" "Doing what?" she asked quietly. "That moving like that." Lyra didn't know how to explain the countless lessons her world had taught her. Lessons that didn't come from books, but from surviving storms, avoiding predators, climbing unstable cliffs, and escaping dangers that appeared without warning. Humans didn't choose to be fast, they had to be. "Where I come from," she said gently, "we learn to avoid danger. Everything on our world teaches us." "That's nonsense," Varkesh snapped, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "You're just pretending," Lyra gave a small, sad smile. "I'm not pretending." Her calmness didn't help. His pride, wounded and stinging, pushed him further into rashness. "You think you're better than me," he yelled. "No," she said simply. "I think you're hurt inside. And that makes you act like this." The truth hit him harder than any strike. For a moment, His eyes flickered not with anger, but with something unguarded. Something tired, but he buried it quickly under his frustration. "I'll make you stop ignoring me." He charged again, faster this time, using his full weight. Lyra felt the shift in the air before he even reached her. She stepped aside, turned her body, and lightly placed her hand on his shoulder to redirect him. His momentum took him farther forward than he expected. He stumbled, regained balance, and spun back toward her with a wild expression. She didn't move aggressively. She only adjusted her stance to stay balanced. But her posture had changed, small changes, but meaningful ones. Her feet planted more firmly. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breath evened out. Varkesh felt it before he understood it. She was ready now, not angry, not scared, just ready. He charged one last time. Lyra watched him with the steady patience of someone who had dodged faster, wilder creatures than him back home. She let him close the distance, let him believe he had the upper hand, and then, with the smallest movement of her foot, she shifted her center of gravity. His momentum rushed past her like wind. She placed her hand on his arm again, gentle, almost caring, and turned her body with his movement. Her technique wasn't violent. It was simple, practiced, and efficient. Varkesh's own force carried him forward, and he fell to the floor with a heavy thud. He wasn't badly hurt, just shocked. He lay there breathing hard, staring up at the ceiling. Lyra stepped back to give him space, her expression calm and quiet. She waited for him to get up. When he finally pushed himself to his knees, his chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He looked at her like she was a creature carved from uncertainty, soft and harmless on the outside, but shaped by something deeper, older, and stronger. His voice trembled slightly. What are you?" Lyra tilted her head. "Human. That's not normal," he whispered. She shook her head softly. "It is normal for us." He swallowed hard, still trying to understand. She didn't look threatening, didn't stand in a fighting stance, didn't show any pride in what she had done. She wasn't pleased with the outcome. She wasn't proud of winning. She was only sad that things had come this far. "I didn't want this," she said quietly. He didn't answer. Shame, confusion, and fear tangled inside him. He had thought she was weak. He had thought she was easy to push. He had thought she would break. Instead, her quiet patience had outweighed his loud strength. She turned to leave, her steps soft and steady. "You should rest," she said gently. "Tomorrow will be different." He didn't understand what she meant, but he didn't ask. She walked away down the corridor, her shadow stretching behind her. The soft blue lights made her small form look calm again, like the same quiet girl he had always seen. Except she wasn't the same, and he finally knew it. As Lyra disappeared into the distance, Varkesh remained on the floor, staring at the space she had left. His pride, once solid like stone, now felt cracked. His confidence felt uncertain, and for the first time in his life, he felt humbled. She had not beaten him with anger. She had not humiliated him. She had simply shown him a truth he had never known. Quiet did not mean weak. Soft did not mean fragile. And humans, especially the quiet ones, were nothing like he imagined. The Deathworld girl had shown her quiet strength, and the station would never forget it. The news of what happened on the Orison station traveled farther and faster than anyone expected. For aliens who usually lived with slow emotions and slow reactions, the story of a small human girl facing down a tormentor seemed impossible. Yet they whispered it in corridors, transmitted it across comms, shared it in secret channels, and repeated it like a strange myth. Each time the story spread, the details changed a little, but one point remained the same. The human girl had not used violence. Her calm anger had been sharper than blades, and her steady voice had been stronger than weapons. Lyra did not care about fame or stories spreading. She only cared that the tormentor was gone, and that the station felt a little safer to breathe in. But even with him gone, she continued moving carefully. A person who grew up on a Deathworld never stopped scanning for danger. Her steps were quiet, her gaze always measuring, her senses always awake. She did not trust peace, because in her experience, peace was something that could break at any moment. However, something changed in the station after the incident. Doors opened for her more quickly. Aliens who once avoided her now nodded respectfully. Some greeted her with gentle gestures. Even the maintenance drones seemed to hum differently when she walked past, as though their programs recognized her presence. She still felt alone sometimes, but it was a different kind of alone, less cold, less heavy. Even so, she sensed something building beneath the surface. The aliens who had followed the Tormentor before did not speak to Lyra, but they watched her from a distance. Their expressions were not friendly, but not openly hostile either. They seemed lost, unsure what to do now that the person they once feared or supported was gone. Some of them had followed him because they were weak. Some followed him because they feared him, and some followed him because they admired his harshness. Now their world felt shaken, and they did not know how to stand. Lyra noticed their stares, but she never responded. She simply continued her tasks, continued her routines, and continued learning the systems of the station. She believed that if she walked straight and did her work honestly, trouble would not come. Trouble, however, had its own shape and its own timing. One day, as she walked alongside the long, transparent hall that showed the wide view of drifting nebula clouds outside, she sensed 3 figures moving behind her. Their footsteps were soft, careful, hoping to blend into the background. Lyra's instincts sharpened the air around her. She did not stop walking. She kept her pace even and natural, but she listened very closely. One of the figures stepped forward when she reached a quieter section. He was tall, with long silver tendrils that shook lightly with emotion. His voice was calm, but it carried a certain demand. "You are the human," he said. "You made the Tormentor fall." Lyra kept her face neutral. "I did not make anyone fall. He made his own choices." The alien hesitated, taken aback by the simple truth of her words. But he pushed forward. "We have questions. There are things we do not understand. You did not fight him. You did not strike him. You did not use force. Yet he broke. That is not my concern," she said quietly. "He harmed others. That was enough." The alien's companions looked at each other with unease. Lyra continued past them, believing the conversation to be over. But before she reached the end of the hall, one of them spoke again, this time with frustration. "You changed the balance on this station," he said. "You made us look weak. And others now expect us to follow your way. But we do not understand your way." Lyra stopped walking. She turned slowly, her eyes steady but not angry. "You should not follow my way," she said. "You should follow what is right." The aliens had no response to that. They simply watched as she walked away. Later that night, Lyra slept lightly, as she always had. Deathworld sleep was not deep. It was a kind of watchful rest, always ready to wake at the slightest sound. So when the corridor lights flickered outside her quarters, she woke instantly, sitting up with alert eyes. The door slid open without her command. 6 aliens stepped inside. They were not armed, but their posture held tension, as though their nerves were tied in knots. The leader was the same tall alien from earlier. He looked troubled, not aggressive. "We need your help," he said. Lyra blinked, surprised. She had expected trouble, but not this kind. "What is it?" The alien lowered his gaze. His tendrils curled inward with shame. "There is a device," he said. "The Tormentor left it behind. It is connected to the lower power grid. We did not know about it. Now it activates on a cycle. We do not have the access codes to shut it down." "What kind of device?" she asked. "We do not know, but we think it could harm the station." And then Lyra understood. It was not revenge from the aliens in front of her. It was revenge from the Tormentor himself, left behind as one final strike. One last act of cruelty. As if he wanted the station to remember him, even after he was gone. "Show me," Lyra said. They led her down through the lower decks. The lights grew dimmer with each level. The air felt heavier, thicker, as though the station itself was warning them about what lay ahead. Lyra studied every detail: the hum of the generators, the faint vibration in the metal floors, the sharp scent of chemical residue. She could already sense the unstable energy in the air. Her instincts sharpened like a knife's edge. When they reached the hidden chamber, Lyra stared at the device and understood its design immediately. It was not deadly by itself. It was something worse. Unpredictable. The kind of device that malfunctioned in chaotic ways. Sometimes it might overload a panel. Sometimes create power surges. Sometimes cause hall doors to open or close at the wrong time. And if left running long enough, it could spark a chain reaction in the power systems that could destroy half the station. The aliens looked helpless. "We tried to disable it," one said, "but everything we do makes it worse." Lyra walked around it slowly, observing the cables, the weak points, the energy patterns. Humans from Deathworlds learn technology the way other children learned how to walk through danger, through mistakes, through survival. Lyra could see the flaws in the device as though they were glowing. "Do not touch it again," she said. "I will handle it." The aliens stepped back immediately. Lyra knelt beside the device with calm hands. She breathed slowly, letting her pulse settle. The key to working with unstable tech was never force. It was patience, steady focus, and respect for what the machine could do. The Tormentor had created the device to frighten others. He had expected that fear would cause panic. But Lyra did not panic. She saw the toy-like fragility inside the threat. She disconnected one cable. The lights above flickered but stabilized. She adjusted a panel. The device hissed, then calmed. She removed a power rod and placed it gently on the floor. The energy readings began to fall. The aliens watched her as though watching a miracle. Finally, she pressed 2 contact points together, using the edge of her sleeve as insulation. The device gave a soft whine, then powered down completely. Silence filled the room. The aliens stared at her, stunned. The leader finally spoke. "You saved the station." Lyra stood up. "Anyone could have done it." "No," he said quietly. His words carried a new emotion, respect born from understanding, not fear. When they returned to the upper levels, word spread again. But this time, Lyra did not sense suspicion in the gazes that followed her. She sensed unity, or at least the beginning of it. The station felt less fractured, less uncertain. Aliens who once kept their distance now approached her with genuine gratitude. Small gestures appeared everywhere, doors opening faster, equipment being adjusted to her height, food portions being set aside for her in the mess hall. These were not grand actions, but they were real. Lyra accepted them quietly. She never asked for reward, never sought praise. She only wanted things to be calm and safe. And in those days after the device had been disabled, the station finally felt like a place where she could breathe without expecting danger in every shadow. Yet the story of her calm fury had grown even larger. Some called her the quiet storm. Others called her the small human who ended a giant. Lyra did not like titles, but she understood that people needed stories to help them make sense of fear. She simply lived her life, step by step, not as a hero but as a girl from a difficult world who had learned how to stay steady in chaos. The Tormentor's shadow was gone, but the lessons remained. Strength was not in fists or weapons. Strength was in patience, in calm, in truth, in standing up, even when one's voice was soft. And now the station, once divided and full of tension, had begun to change around her slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. The Deathworld girl had not only ended the Tormentor, she had given the station a new beginning.